Greetings, everyone. I'm former Congressman and retired Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, and I want to thank the Frederick Douglass Society for their Juneteenth event, which is entitled Race to Economic Emancipation. I'm from down south in Georgia, and I want to take a few moments to talk to you about what my parents and grandparents used to call the old school ways, because I think that that's what we must get back to if our black community is to survive and continue on for another future, another great succession where we will hand off something better to our children and grandchildren. When I think about some of the horrific statistics that are affecting our black community, some of you there in Michigan know exactly what I'm talking about. I remember once upon a time visiting my relatives up there in Inkster, Michigan, which is right outside Detroit. But when you look at Detroit today, it is really just a shell of itself. When I go back to my neighborhood in Atlanta, Georgia, I see something that's a shell of itself. And why is that? Why is it that us as a black community have forgotten our basic fundamental values? Our belief in God, our belief in family, our belief in individual responsibility, our belief in self-reliance, our belief in entrepreneurship, our belief in a strong education. See, growing up with my parents, and it's important to know that I just said my parents, because 29% of our black children today have mother and father in their home. We have gone from creating an opportunity society in the black community to creating a dependency society. And that is what leads us down the road of the path where we see some of these horrific situations in the inner city. We must once again restore the sense of family and family pride and the responsibility of men and women raising their children. This is not to say that a single parent cannot be successful, but it is to say this, that this, what we see now in the black community, is not who we're supposed to be. I was absolutely appalled when I heard about some show called My Baby's Mamas. Luckily, it was canceled. But the fact that someone even thought about producing a show such as that in my hometown of Atlanta, Georgia, to highlight some rap star who had multiple children from multiple women. And we had just recently heard about some gentleman who has fathered some 22 children from, I believe, 14 or 15 different women. His excuse was because he's a lover. That's not what our community is supposed to be about. Our community is about strong families. Our community is about strong family values. Our community is about raising children to let them know that we will make sure that they have something greater and something better than what the previous generations had, which is what my grandparents and my parents wanted to make sure for myself and my two brothers. When I think about education in our black community and the failing schools that we see in our inner city communities, we need to stand up with one voice, unified, stentorian, loud, and vocal to make sure that we let your concerns be heard. Why is it that we don't promote things such as school choice? Why is it that we don't promote a voucher program in the inner cities to at least allow some of our children the opportunity to be able to escape some of the pitfalls that we see? I think it's very sad that there are some people that would rather prefer the unions and the teachers' unions than prefer what is best for our children. See, I believe one simple thing, that education is a great equalizer, and that's what my parents really reinforced in me. To be able now to have a bachelor's degree and 2 master's degrees, to be married to a woman that has a bachelor's, an MBA, and a PhD, well, you can just imagine how our 2 daughters are raised, with 2 parents that stress education, because education unlocks the door of opportunity. And that's what we have to do for our children today. And that's really what the Frederick Douglass Society is all about. We will not have economic emancipation if we don't have education at its highest levels. And then what you have to understand is when we have those families that are together, when we stress the education to open up opportunities, then we see entrepreneurship and small business development grow and come back into our communities within the inner city. Many of you can walk around the inner city neighborhoods there in Michigan, just as I do when I go back home in Atlanta, and I see a neighborhood that's a shell of itself. See, I remember walking down Auburn Avenue because my elementary school was right there at the intersection of Boulevard and Auburn. When you walked past Ebenezer Baptist Church, you saw incredible offices, doctors' offices, lawyers' offices, Southern Christian Leadership Convention office. You saw entrepreneurship. You saw people that came from that community, that hired people from that community. But what do you see today? You see boarded up buildings. You see ramshackle places. You see more of Section 8 housing than you see people going out and living the American dream to get their own home. We've got to restore that sense of small business ownership and entrepreneurship. See, once upon a time, it was all about physical bondage. We did break those chains. But today, my concern is, and I think it's the Frederick Douglass Society's concern, the economic bondage that we must be emancipated from. I don't think that there is a sense of pride that you get in sitting back and waiting for someone to deliver a check to you. I think your sense of pride comes from the ability to go out and work with your own hands and produce your own labor so that you can come home and say, this is something that I did. And when I think about the important role that the black church plays in this, we need to once again talk about that thing of individual responsibility and individual liberty. See, so often in our churches on Sunday, we talk about the things that are conservative in nature. When you talk about salvation, it's an individual responsibility. But then what happens when we leave the churches Monday through Saturday? We then become dependent on others. We forget that sense of being individually responsible. We've got to restore that in our communities. What do I see for the future of the black community? I believe that we will rise to the challenge. I believe that we will once again reignite that sense of who we are, a strong people that have survived some incredibly adverse conditions and situations here in the United States of America. But if we're not careful, we will continue down the path of second, third, maybe fourth generation social welfare dependency and programs. I don't think it's about sitting back and waiting for someone to send you a check. I understand the social welfare net, but I don't want to see the net become a hammock whereby we sit back and we just watch the day go by. Let's get back to the old school ways. Let's get back to how our parents and grandparents raised us. Sometimes when I'm up here in Washington, D.C., and I'm on the metro, I listen to some of the ways that our young people talk. It is totally disrespectful. It is loud. It is obnoxious. When I'm walking home sometimes and I see some of these young kids coming out of schools and the fights that they're having out in public, that's not who we are. That's not the old school ways. So I salute the Frederick Douglass Society. I thank them for having this Juneteenth event. And I thank them for having the theme of race to economic emancipation. Once you can become economically viable and independent and not be dependent, then you open up the doors of opportunity. The doors of opportunity that makes America an exceptional nation. The doors of opportunity for which so many people have come to this great nation to be a part of. Let's make sure that we're a part of it as well. May God bless you all, and God keep you.